So we'll open up the afternoon session, member show and tell, so they can show us and showcase some of their wonderful bits of work. And we're going to start with Simon Wellesley Miller, who's going to give us show us something on length of stay and box plots. So over to you, Simon.
Okie dokie. Am I sharing my screen? Have you got a nice blank screen come up? Just check that's right. What is going on here? There we go. Right. So my name is Simon Wellesley Miller. I'm Information Manager at Devon Partnership Trust. And I'm just going to do a very quick sell for you on understanding length of stay using box plots, which doesn't include any tricky maths whatsoever, although there is some maths included. And like I say, this works with waiting lists as well. I think what I'm trying to do is sell the magic of box plots and how awesome they are. And it's not about box pups, which I Googled by mistake. So I don't know what that's in there. So length of stay, absolutely classic thing used widely across the NHS. And it's all about trying to provide a summary of some summary statistics that, try to pull down a load of different things and try to get a summary. However, it does have some problems by using an average, which we will have a look at. So probably best by looking at an example. So let's grab some patients. There we go. We've got our little patients popping in, give them all names, and let's give them each a length of stay. So there we go. 5 patients, each of them have got their own length of stay. And just going to put the patients in order by their length of stay just to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So there we go. There's our patients, and that's their length of stay. So there we go. We're going to chuck Bob over to the side because he's a bit of an outlier from the rest. So let's do some maths here, which I'm sure you're all here for. So the most basic average of our lengths of stay is your arithmetic mean. So that would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 20, which fastest fingers comes through as 30. And then we've got 5 patients, so we divide that by 5, which gives us an average of 6. So I guess the question is, looking at the patients and that spread of distribution, is 6 a good representation of that average? 80% of the patients are below 6. And then the remaining 20% of patients is way above 6. So is 6 a good representation of that patient group? So let's have a look at a different one. We could look at the median. So the median, as we all should know, is the literal middle value. We've already tidied up our data and put them in order, and we can see there that our middle value is 3. So again, is 3 a better representation of our data? It sits more better where our data lies, so it's kind of better on that score. So it does give us that slightly better feeling of what's going on, but it does have a big failing in that it totally doesn't take into account any outliers. So Bob's length of stay 20 could be 200, and the average, our median, would still be 3. So what we want is some magic way that we can show that whole distribution of our length of stay in a easy, recognizable way that is explainable, and we actually can kind of get a feeling of that entire what is going on. So what we want to do is hopefully represent that in a way that senior managers and clinicians can actually understand. So we're going to break it all down and say break it down, possibly dumb it down. So let's have a look at our length of stay example. There we've got our patients all in their order. We already had our median value, which was our middle value, which splits our data in half. So we'll pop a line there. Then we split our data into quarters. So literally, again, if we look at our median point and we go halfway to the middle, to the minimum and halfway to the maximum, we can put in 2 extra lines here. And we put one in there. So We have the line halfway between the minimum and the median is called the first quartile, and a line halfway between the median and the maximum is called the third quartile. And basically what we can do to make it a little bit clearer is put that section in a box. That now represents 50% of our data set. So we know that half our data set fits within that box. And then what we can do is try to represent further the spread and the distribution of that data. So we know, as we said, half our data lies in that box. So we calculate the range between the first and the third quartile. So basically, how wide is that area there? Which is called the interquartile range, because it's just talking about what is the range between those quartiles. So again, massive bit of maths time. We want to calculate our interquartile range, which would be our quartile 3 minus our first quartile, which is 4 minus 2. Hopefully we can work that out, is 2. So let's say we did keep it super simple. We can draw a line now to show our range. So we draw a line up to 1.5 times our interquartile range, which in this case would be 1.5 times 2, which again, hopefully this maths isn't blowing your mind too much, gives us a nice answer of 3. So we now draw a line to show that range. So that one goes out there, that one goes out there. If the line reaches the maximum or the minimum data point, then we just leave it there. So we can tidy that up and just show it with a line. So mostly there, however, we do still have something that's a little bit odd. We have our plot that shows us our average, where a majority of our data lies, but we do have one point that isn't really taken into account within that box plot. So we do have our mate Bob, who is an outlier. So we can just plot that outlier, Bob, with a dot, because he's statistically, we can see that he is an outlier. So we just pop a dot there. So removing all our patients, we are left basically there with a box plot. So that box plot shows us that full distribution of what's going on. We can understand, yes, that's our median and that's our average length of stay. However, we can also see now that there's quite a spread and we've got an outlier. So it kind of conveys that entire message across in one go. Yeah, obviously this example is not strictly to scale. And also technically, if a quartile line contains no data, then you remove it. So we wouldn't actually plot that line on there because it actually didn't contain any data. So yeah, that's a really rubbish example. Sorry about that. So of course, box plots can be vertical as well as horizontal, so we can show them that way as well. And there we go, a very, very quick summary of what a box plot is and what it can show. So it's really good at showing either those lengths of stay, but also identifying those outliers, or if you've got waiting times as well. So it's all very well saying the average waiting time is this. Sometimes you want to know what's the minimum, what's the maximum, but also, you know, how many people we've got as outliers. And I think it's a really good way of getting that whole totality of what's going on across the distribution across. So, you know what you're thinking? How on earth am I going to manage to plot one of those? It sounds really, really complicated, lots and lots of stuff. And yeah, there's probably some people talking about kittens. So I am going to show you my friend R, which is over here. So R is absolutely fantastic tool. Thoroughly recommend that you get to grips with it because it can do stuff like this unbelievably so. So if you were going to, if you've got the latest version of Excel, possibly in the 365 version or something on those lines, I think there are options which will allow you to do box plots. I've still not managed to do them in Excel, but we can do them in R. Basically, we can run our data, which is our 1, 2, 3, 4, and 20, and then we can just tell it box plots data. So just in absolute base R, you can create a box plot like that, which is unbelievably quick and simple. And I think most people, no matter what their R level of knowledge, can see that that's really, really quick and simple. We can make our plot a little bit nicer by using things like ggplot. What have I done there? I've done that. That's what I've done. And we can also create sort of our data that way, and you can obviously, once you put it into ggplot, you can tweak and change absolutely everything within your chart as you wish. You can use Plotly library, which again, as you can see, hopefully you can see this is like literally 2 lines of code. You can make a Plotly box plot, which basically is an interactive box plot, so you can hover over it, it comes up with the answers. You can do things, you can zoom into areas and it will bring up all manners of sort of things like that. So I'll just very quickly look at a real example. So this is as of today some data from our wards. So I'm just going to compare 2 wards. Let's actually load the data in and it might actually work. And where are we? Oh, so I've got our Haytor ward and our Moreland View ward. We can see that our Haytor ward has a lower average length of stay than our Moreland View ward, which is traditionally what we would report on. But we can see that there is considerable difference in the actual spread and the distribution of those lengths of stay. What can make it a little bit easier to say is if you can plot on the individual patients as well. So let's do that as well by way of a jitter. So we can see those now. So each dot now is an individual patient, but we can now see that spread of that distribution. So in Haytor, our median is 48. In Moreland View, it's 57. But like I say, you can see there's a real difference in that spread of distribution. And we can also see that Haytor has got some massive outliers compared to Moreland View. So just reporting on a median and average is not necessarily what you want to do. I think if we can get more senior managers understanding box plots and understanding distributions and what box plots can tell you, because just working on that pure average, you are really missing out on some of that nuance in the data. So that's pretty much what I wanted to go through. I'm just got about 30 seconds left just to say box plots are awesome. Get to learn your R. You can produce them. You can do them sort of box plots over time, so you can sort of see the differences over time. I've done that before, so that's it. If there's any quick questions?
There is a question there.
There is a question.
Yeah, sorry, Simon. It's probably ridiculously basic coming from me. But the interquartile quarters were known as quarter 1 and quartile 1 and quartile 3.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that the first one is called quartile 1? It just seems counterintuitive that it's not the one outside the interquartile box is quarter 1 and that's not quartile 2.
Well, so quartile 2 would be your median, which is your middle value. Quartile 1 is halfway between that, and quartile 3 is your third one. I guess if I go back to where are we? This one, and then where are we? There. So your median is your quartile 2, and then halfway between those is your quartile 1. So it kind of goes quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and then.
I'm with you.
Yeah, does that make a bit more sense?
That single number is the quartile.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Told you I was basic.
No, that's fine. Any other questions or queries? Other than that, use box plots because average lengths of stay are really frustrating. I mean, I'm working within a mental health. I guess it's really, they're really good when you've got a very simple, basic system where you're doing the same thing over and over and again. I think, I work with mental health wards, so our patients, that's really difference in the distributions. And like I say, that was live proper data I was showing you there, and as you can see, the actual distributions of how long people are staying. It's really important for managers to know, and if they just focus on that median and that average, they're really missing out on, you know, those people who've been in there for a ridiculous amount of time, and yeah, they just don't see that. So I think we need to clever our managers up, get that data literacy going for our senior managers, so we can actually tell them more what's going on. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. And
No
as usual, all these slides will be available. I just wanted to point out, you did have the matrix background up when we started, and you ended up with The Shining. I just wondered if there was any significance.
No, that's probably just me talking about senior managers puts me in that frame of mind.
Right. Now moving over then to Sygal, who's going to show us some of her work on the art and science of prophecy.
Great. I hope you can see my slides, because I can't see you while I present.
We can see, or I can see the
Yes,
slides. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about a reasonably small piece of analysis that I did, but actually turned out to be quite important, and with implications that are still being searched out. So it is well known, or at least in our trust at Nottingham University Hospitals, we have this tagline that every minute counts for every patient. So patients should never spend any more time in hospital than they absolutely need to. And of course, with a national shortage of hospital beds, healthcare staff, every minute counts for everyone, not just for patients. They count for the healthcare staff as well. The chart is just one I grabbed out, and basically shows how many patients at midnight we've got who have been basically ready to leave hospital for over 24 hours. So they should have gone yesterday, but they didn't, basically. And that number, while during COVID was quite low for a while, is rising, and the backlog is very, very difficult to reduce. So this is going back a while, but ESIS, the Emergency Care Improvement Support Team, came up with a safer patient flow bundle, and I'm going to talk about one particular part of this, which is that all patients should have an expected discharge date and clinical criteria for discharge, and this should be set to assuming ideal recovery and assuming that no unnecessary waiting happens for these patients. More specifically, I'm going to talk about the expected discharge date, hence my reference to prophecy. So we are looking at setting a date for discharge, and it is good practice. It's good practice because it's better for patient experience. It's much better if the patients know when they will be going home, something to look forward to. It's better for the carers and family. They will know when to prepare for their loved ones coming home. It's better for the clinicians are constantly thinking and planning discharge from the very first day after admission, so that there's a discharge mindset, not keep people in hospital any longer than necessary. So it's also good because the integrated discharge team and external partners can plan and set up any ongoing care that may be required, or care packages, and they will and so they're ready in time for the patient leaving the hospital, and there are no delays. There are other services that need to arrange transport for patients to go home. The pharmacy needs to set up medication to take out. So discharges need to occur in a timely manner, and there's no delays for these patients. So overall, discharge support the flow in hospital as well, because for example, they can reduce the bed waits in emergency departments. So the sooner the patient leaves the bed, the quicker the bed can be made ready for another patient who is waiting in ED, sometimes for many hours. So I'm going to be talking, as I said, about the expected discharge date. And at NUH, we don't quite use the EDD or expected discharge date. Instead, we use a predicted date medically safe. And by medically safe, we mean that a patient no longer needs a bed in an acute setting. So they need to move on to another care setting as necessary or home otherwise. And I will basically use these interchangeably because the date that the patient becomes medically safe is the date they should be leaving hospital. So that is the discharge date. So apologies if I mix those terms up, but basically when I say predicted date, I mean either of those. National guidance as it stands at the moment is that you set the expected date or you predict the date within 24 hours of admission, and then you review it and update it regularly. Trusts report on compliance and accuracy of this prediction. So here is our data. I picked a slice of the data. On compliance in blue, which is well over 90%, and accuracy in red, which is about 50%. So this is exact accuracy. So about 50% of all of our predicted dates are on exactly the right date, which is not so bad a thing. So we're looking quite good, don't we? So here are some processes that are aligned to this date to avoid delays to discharge. So some of them I've already mentioned. So for example, we need the transfer of care documents or ETOCs to be sent out 48 hours before that predicted date. The integrated discharge team works with the external partners to ensure the packages of care. Could be care home beds, but it could be crutches. It could be a wheelchair that somebody might need leaving hospital, but they need to be ready for the patient on the predicted date. Then the medication to take out should be prepared the day before the predicted date, need to be submitted. So pharmacy has a time to process it and dispense it. And then transport should be booked the day before as well. So loads of processes are actually aligned to this date. So it's really important to get it accurately. But this is what we're hearing on the ground from clinicians and from the staff that are working on wards. ETOCs have to be redone multiple times. They are sent late, so external partners do not have enough time to set up the required packages, delaying discharge. Packages of care are lost because patients are not safe when expected, and then they lose them, all the work that's gone into them, and the money as well. Packages of care already in progress have to be sometimes aborted and new ones started because the dates get changed. Medication to take have to be redone again and again. Transport booked and paid for, patient not medically safe to leave. So all of these things are things we've actually heard, from clinicians about the process. So how come there is such a discrepancy between the way we look on paper and what is actually happening on the ground? So let's look at the details here. The percentage of discharge patients who had their first predicted date within 48 hours of admission. That's the first, so their first time they had a predicted date, whereas the accuracy is actually based on the last time they had their predicted date set. So the devil is in the details, and part of the problem is that because it's reviewed regularly, the PDMS or predicted date gets changed. So how often does it get changed? Well, a lot. So this chart basically shows the ordinal number of the predicted dates in spells, and what it basically shows is that 4 in 5 patients, more than that actually, have their predicted date changed at least once after it was originally set. More than half, at least 2 changes. More than a third, 3 or more changes, etc., etc. So it changes a lot. Okay, so it's not just the number of changes, but actually the timing of the changes that disrupts the discharge processes. What we found is that a lot of the changes were made after, so less than 48 hours before the previously predicted date. So if you change it too late, any work already done towards that deadline would be wasted. On the other hand, almost 40% of those revised predicted date were less than 48 hours into the future, so not leaving enough time ahead to do the work that's required. And in fact, both could be the same both could be true for the same change. So it's a huge issue. So can we do better at predicting the expected date? Can we keep the benefits of having a set date to work towards while avoiding the waste and delays that result from our current moving goalpost practices? So we want to increase accuracy, reduce the number of changes. This is a case study in healthcare of older people, a specialty, also known as geriatric medicine. It's the biggest population that these problems appear in, problems with the predicted date, because it's the biggest population that needs supported discharge. So they need all these things as they leave hospital. I'm looking at only patients with length of stay over 4 days. And over this period, I'm going to skip that because I'm running out of time and I've not actually shown you any data yet. So the first question would be, does actual regular updating increase the accuracy of our prediction? And we've got accurate prediction in blue, so exact prediction. The predicted date is the actual date. And the predicted date is more or less the actual date, plus or minus 1 day. And you can see that beyond the first prediction, there is no substantial increase to the accuracy. So actually, changing the predicted date incurs a really large cost, but returns very, very little benefit in terms of accuracy. So how accurate is the initial prediction of length of stay? So this is the x-axis here is the days from admission to the first time the patient is flagged as medically safe, so ready to leave hospital. And we can see that the first prediction is only about a quarter of them would be correct for 4 days and onwards. It's a little bit better going up to almost 60% for 4 days, sort of 5 days. So the best accuracy is when the length of stay is 4 to 5 days. It's not surprising because, as you can see in the gray bars are the distribution of those lengths of stay. So actually that's the peak of the distribution. So it's not surprising if you are aiming at a very big target, you're more likely to hit it. So brilliant, but not really helpful. So how far in the future are predictions made? You can see that the first prediction is only made at the peak at 2 days away. Some are made to the same day, some to the next day. Given that actually let's say, sorry, Simon, the average length of stay for this population is 11 days, the median is 10. We can see that actually that's way, way off what is perhaps realistic. So the subsequent predictions, most of them are actually done. So when you change the dates, they're changed to the actual day, the same day, or to 1 day away. They're very conservative. They don't plan very far into the future. But this means that there are many, many, many changes happening, because if they change it every 2 days to 2 days away and you're your average length of stay is 10 days or 11 days, then wow, you'd be changing it all the time. So how far in advance can we predict the medically safe date? Not very, actually. So we're talking about the best accuracy, of course, being for today or tomorrow, but that's not helpful. And the first prediction, so actually what I showed you before were all the predictions, but even the first one, again, the only advantage of doing it again and again is to tomorrow and or today, which is not helpful at all. So actually we can't predict very far, and the repeated changes, as you can see, because those lines merge beyond 2 days ahead, they're basically not really helping us increase the accuracy. So what we have is a system that's designed perfectly to get the outcome that it does. The national guidance requires doctors to predict the discharge day on the first day after admission. So for good compliance, it doesn't need to be accurate. It doesn't need to be anything. It just needs to be there. It just needs to be set. So it's not possible to predict accurately, and they're not really needed. They don't need to. So the best thing is to just set any old date, a week away, 2 days away, it doesn't matter. On the other hand, you need to regularly update it. So you want, you want that accuracy, but then it's most accurate when you set it to today or tomorrow, when you already know the patient is going to be discharged. So it's all counterproductive to actually the purpose of setting this date, which is to be able to plan and align all the processes for discharge around it. So can we do better?
Sorry, Sygal, can I just say that we have overrun now by a couple of minutes, so we'll have to forget any Q&A afterwards, but if you can, sorry, I don't want to rush you, but
I'm so sorry. I will. So basically, the best way would be to predict the date 3 or 4 days away, when the clinician already knows that the patient is heading towards discharge. It'll give enough time, but it won't. But it's more likely to be accurate. So basically, will it work? Well, we've got a trial running right now, looking at exactly this. So so rather than trying to look at to be compliant, and you can see the compliance list which is the most updated one, and the compliance has gone down, which is exactly what we'd expect. And I'm hoping that what we're seeing is a more consistent accuracy, but it's really early days. So apologies for overrunning and no time for questions. Sorry.
if anybody does have any questions, if they put them in the chat, and then we can always pick them up afterwards and get some responses. So thank you very much, Sygal, for your very enthusiastic little presentation there. Yeah, every minute does count for every patient, and I think that's sometimes what we have to remember. It's not about the bigger numbers, it's about each individual person. So we're going to pass over now to James Payne, who's from the Southwest, and he's going to showcase his work on Microsoft R and SQL automation working model with R Markdown. Away you go, James.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name's James Payne. I am from University Hospitals in Dorset, and I am a business analyst there. I'm on a course at the moment, basically training to be an analyst, believe it or not, and it's been actually 2 years to this day that I've been in the department. And I've been doing lots of project work and bits and pieces kind of in my own time. And this is one of them. And this was inspired by Simon when I went to one of his first NHS-R little online sessions that he did. And it's all around sort of Markdown. Since then, though, we've had Microsoft have got hold of R, and they've put it into SQL servers 2016 and 2019. So I've been having a look at it, sort of looking around it and seeing how it works and how it all comes together, and it's quite fun and quite exciting. So using a 2019 server and a Microsoft SQL version of 2019, I've created a web live sort of based custom reporting platform using Markdown. So in this scenario, my trust doesn't use Linux, for example, to host Shiny. And to buy a professional, what do you call it? The RStudio professional package is very, very expensive. So how can I get around that was kind of my project. So this is kind of a full walkthrough from RStudio to actually to the customer. There's some challenges involved. So Microsoft R is still very, very new. Some things aren't supported at the moment, but I think they're rapidly trying to get that sorted. This process technically shouldn't actually be able to happen. So I've had to actually create a workaround. 3 weeks ago when I was sort of building this, everything came to a grinding halt at the SQL part of the project when I got a massive error message basically. And reading into the detail, our Markdown cannot actually run within the SSMS environment if you know SQL. So how on earth do we get around that? So this is my plan of action of what's actually going on. So we've got our studio where we build our Markdown file, and then basically we then send that over to the SQL server, but we're not going to actually use the actual SSMS server part. We're actually going to run it from the pure R code that actually sits on the server. I then pass that through to a web page that I've created in C#, and then chuck that onto IIS onto the web server. So obviously I'm looking at this from an analytical sort of point of view, really. So my first stage is to create my Markdown file, which I use RStudio for. Then I kind of make like an execute file in R, which I'll show you all this in a minute. Then going on from there, you have to actually then execute that from the SQL. So at that point, then this is where it all becomes automated. So if you had a live scenario, say like your A&E department, where they constantly want live updates, say every 5, 10, 15 minutes, this sort of thing would be ideal. And also you could build it into your SSRS environment, and you could build it into your Power BI environment and run it all together. So you're maximizing basically R live, and it's just running itself on live data, which sounds amazing. So my process, so I've done this all on a dev environment. I'm basically really, really sad and got my own server in my front room. And I'm running SQL-19 on there with ISS installed. That server's name is called Alita. And I've got a virtual Windows 10 machine called DTO1, which has got RStudio and the SQL Management Studio on. So this is the exciting part. You've got 2 for the price of 1 now. So this is a custom mood meter that Kate and myself and Paul put together. And basically it's a ggplot2 package that generates that lovely, wonderful graphic there on the down the bottom right-hand corner. So the first part of my project is to actually create the R product. So, you know, my graphic, as it were. So this is one very, very simple but complicated graphic that then I can take my R code, which is all this lovely bit here, and then I can put that into a Markdown file. So using RStudio again, I've got my Markdown code here, so chunks, etc., going on there, all my packages that I'm using. This part of the code here is pulling the SQL live, so it's my live connection, and then there's all the ggplot there and the graphics to customize making this grid. The grid behind here is just a graphics file, a ping, and then you can see there's my connection to the server. I'm running a Sprock from there, bringing my data in, and then what you do is you knit these together. I mean, I won't go into it too much because you could spend all day just talking about Markdown, but I'm kind of speeding through the process a little bit. But basically, when you press that button there, knit, it puts together this lovely little HTML file here, which is all built in this lovely little screen here. So going on from there, I then have to make an R file. So this is the bit that I'm talking about when I'm telling the SQL server to run this externally. So these are all the same. So basically, it's very, very simple. It's where my code's sitting, where I need it to go to, and where to output to. So it's very, very simple in terms of what it does. So jumping over to the SQL part of, so this is the bit that's interesting. If I ran that R Markdown file from the server, I get a massive, lovely, beautiful error message, not just in SQL, but R combined, about half a page of lovely errors. So the way around it that I got to was basically to call it from outside. So when I say I'm calling it from outside, I'm running an external file, which is my R file. And as you can see, I'm actually calling the R services directly. So I'm not cheating or anything. I'm actually just calling it externally. So in my research of what that was doing, Markdown, any graphics or anything like that, you can't actually generate from the server due to a package called Pandoc. It stops, the server can't do it because it from what I'm reading, because it can't see Pandoc, which RStudio can, it basically throws a wobbly and says, no, I can't do that because I'm not a graphics processing server. But outside, you're using pure R as if you're using it as in RStudio. And then I'm outputting to the directory, which is in the R file. And then what I'm doing then is I'm just copying over my HTML file, which is that one there, into my web directory. So there's the stored procedure. Everything's really, really short once you get over to the SQL side. And this is kind of the final output. So this is the output of what's going on and everything. Just to show you everything that's actually, so there's a couple of the pages, but I just want to just, I'm trying to run ahead of myself. Not restricted to just reporting. So it's not just about reports. If you wanted to set this up staff side, for example, you could put your training in there, etc. So rather than me showing you lovely screenshots, here's one we made earlier. Here's a little video for you to watch, if it will play. Oh, it doesn't want to play. Come on. Oh, let me just go back, sorry. There we go. Panic over. Right, so Project Mia. So this is just basically a live recording from the, so if you were using this, this would be from the desktop from a Windows 10 machine. So you can just see sort of like what, so this is all running from a live web server, which you could integrate. So if you're in your trust, for example, if you've got, most people have got SQL, you're running that on a Windows server, you will have the web as part of that. So you can just enable it. Obviously, there's a lot of development. I've tuned down the spec of the server, so it's a little bit slower, but everything's rendered. So when you click on something, it's an instant click. Everything just flies up straight away. So what happens at as it's going through the day, it just basically regenerates those files. They take about 4 to 6 seconds to generate, even though they're actually creating graphics files and everything as they're going. They're really, really quick. That's a training thing that I did for a couple of years, about a year and a half ago for the department, just to give a demonstration of what R Markdown, the ggplot can do. And then the kind of Hello World version of R Markdown is the cars data set. So in here you've got what basically when you start up an R file, an R Markdown file, you kind of get a template to work with, and that's kind of, obviously it's very, very rough. I mean, it has been put together rather quickly, but it's just a model of concept, so you can kind of see what's going on and everything there. One of the other really nice things when I was testing it is I came across a file on the server side that actually generates the console output of RStudio. So basically what that means is when things go terribly wrong, it's nice to be able to actually go in and find out why it's going wrong. So in this example here, basically you can see how it's going through. So this is the knitting process. So you can see here that basically it's gone failed due to the fact that actually I haven't referenced my my graphics file for the custom graphic. So in terms of functionality, the process. I mean, this is only obviously a demo really, but it just gives you an idea of what the power of R alone, coupled with the the Microsoft version. But I'm sure there's other packages out there that are going to fail. This could be your potential workaround, those scenarios if you wanted to keep everything live and kind of all on the same page. If you're restricted to Microsoft products in particular. So yeah, that's Project Mia. It's been quite a journey. I've only been doing this for about 2 years, as I said. Yeah, it's been crazy. Open to any questions.
I'll come in. Thank you very much, James. That was really good. Excellent to see what you've just shown us. Is there any questions for James? I think we have a couple of minutes if there's any questions, but I can't see anything, James, on the chat. That's immediately obvious. So
is that a good sign?
If there are any questions, James, I'm hoping that he'll be staying around, so please post them on the chat and we will contact James. And James, Sygal and Simon, all three of you, thank you so much for sharing your work. Fantastic, excellent work. Thank you. So I think the next agenda is for myself and Sarah Culkin to do a double act around competency framework. So we will go straight on that. So most of you already, I've introduced myself a couple of times in breakout rooms, and here, so I'm Rony Arafin, the Chief Operating Officer. I'm sure Sarah will introduce herself. Sarah, would you talk through the first couple of slides? So I'm going to try and share my screen. First challenge.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, while you're getting them up. So hello, everyone. I am Sarah Culkin. I'm the head of analytics and data science at NHSX. NHSX being the digital transformation bit of the kind of NHS England and Improvement and Department of Health structure. And I'm also the Director of Strategy and Partnerships at AphA. And we're hoping to take you through what we're hopefully not too biased in saying is a really fantastic piece of work we've just done on competency frameworks for health service analysts, as the slide says. Thank you, Rony. So before we go into the meat of the report, I thought I'd just take you through a couple of reasons why we wanted to do the report and then hand over to Rony, because it was really Rony and team that actually led this piece of work. I just sat there and said, well done, this looks brilliant. If we could go on to the next slide, I'm going to go back in time to the AphA conference last year, where it was actually me and a colleague, Suki Palantir, who works for Ming Tang, the now Chief Data and Analytical Officer at NHS England, who I believe is in fact talking to you all tomorrow. We did a joint presentation setting out and crowdsourcing ideas for developing analytics as a profession and really strengthening the offer to analysts working in the system, and ended it, as we are today, in fact, with a Menti session where we asked a few questions around what would make your job easier and more fun, what things we should prioritise and what we've missed. And a lot of the things that were coming out of what would make our job easier and fun were things like, to be honest, cake, gin and cheese, but in there as well were some really useful things around sort of the training opportunities and making things more consistent. And when we asked specifically about what we should prioritise, if you can go to the next slide. It wasn't me that wrote that, I promise, but people again said that we should prioritise the sort of the consistency of professional development and career progression, and someone actually wrote a competency framework. So thank you very much for that, because it tees us up nicely for the rest of our presentation, which is that you said and we listened. So in all seriousness, if you could go to the next slide, please, Rony. We have, yes, and also people said that they wanted an office cat or dog, which is brilliant, because I think at the time it was said as a joke because we were all working in open plan offices, and I think actually now lots of people genuinely do have office cats and dogs, and I've personally got an office gerbil, which is lovely. Anyway, the background to the competency framework piece of work is that it is one piece of a jigsaw, which we've tried to represent here, where we've got a whole programme of work jointly owned between NHSX and NHS England and Improvement, looking to strengthen the role of analysts and the voice of analysts in the system, and working with AphA is a key part of this. So it was really perfect to work with them on a specific piece of work looking at the competency frameworks, so that we could potentially get to the point where we can roll out a set of unified, agreed, endorsed, appropriate frameworks that can do a number of things to help us recruit, retain, move, progress in our careers in a consistent and visible, transparent way. But hopefully, just to say, really, there's a lot of other work going on. This is not the only thing, and hopefully it should all link together beautifully. So I will stop waffling and now pass over to Rony to actually talk you through the really interesting stuff.
Thank you very much, Sarah. But I have to say that it was a fantastic collaboration of work between NHSX, NHSEI and AphA. And it shows that we are working on the same space and doing things collaboratively, which is a great thing. And of course, cake, gin and cheese led us to this work. So, you can't complain. First of all, I wanted to say, so the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk to you about the discovery work, what the outcome is. So thanks to Donna, who's also maintaining our team's sessions today. Martin, Paul, Andrew, Hugh and Katie, who were part of the project team. Of course, Sarah and NHSC and I colleagues were also part of the project team. So just to talk you through very quickly the key findings. So you will be aware of some of these things anyway. So the idea was that there are multiple instances where, that describe the analytical competency framework, but there wasn't one single one. So what we found, actually, there's quite a lot of competency frameworks out there. There wasn't a consolidated one which we could make use of now. And it was obvious, through our kind of discovery work that it would be very, very beneficial to the analytical community if we have such a framework. So I will go to the next slide. Which is, so there were kind of three areas we looked at. We looked at what's currently available through the discovery phase. We looked at, what can we do to really avoid the duplication of effort, and we needed to look at, from our findings, what kind of recommendation we come up with, and I'll talk to you about that shortly. So this is kind of a very quick summary, visual summary of the work that we've done. And thank you for, most of you probably would have been included in this discovery phase of work. So we looked at 28 frameworks, and Donna's done a fantastic piece of work really looking at in detail what those frameworks are and what are the synergies between them. And I have to admit that this was the first time this was done, a desktop review about the analytical competency framework that's out there. We also interviewed 32 individuals, which was very, very good in terms of qualitative study, and a lot of those materials are available now, well, all of it actually, on the AphA website. I'll share the links with you afterwards, you can have a look. And our survey was received really, really well. So thank you so much for all of you who are in this call, who've submitted the form, which informed us a lot of the outcomes I'll talk to you about. Okay, so very quick summary, and I'll share those slides, so I'm not having to talk through the slides. But so the main finding is what I mentioned before. So we looked at 28 competency framework in detail. 18 didn't really provide any kind of in-depth material to analytical careers. The remaining 10 really was originated from various places and had the potential, or has the potential, to be amalgamated or bringing in pieces to develop a consolidated competency framework. And there is not one that brings things together for analytics at this particular moment in time. But as Sarah mentioned earlier on, in I think one of our breakout rooms, that the government analytical framework does provide a good standard for us to work from, because it defines the technical and generic skills, so it can be used as one of the leading framework and be added to. So the interviews, there were lots of things we found from the interviews, particularly that everybody that participated, there's a great deal of interest that actually we need to have a good competency framework that lays out the land, if you like, that when you join as a junior analyst, although we becoming a chief data and analytics officer, chief analytical officer, whatever name you want to call it, what does the journey looks like? What are the skills and competencies you need to get there? There were lots of discussion around how do we develop something which maps across different organizations. But one thing which is here, and we talked about it today, that it needs to have a clear link to training and development opportunities. So competency framework isn't just, you know, these are skills and competencies framework, you just go away and use that. It has some clear links with training and development with capabilities. Some of the feedback we found was quite interesting, actually, and I put them, some of them highlighted in red, that some people felt that it might be quite over-prescriptive. So there is a danger that there will be some barriers to how you adopt such framework when you're wanting to use it. Okay, so the next one is the survey. So we had, as I said, you know, over 207 people who responded to the survey, a very, very rich source of resource. So similar kind of things, you know, that's coming out of the awareness of having an analytical competency framework in the health and care sector is very, very low. So the kind of center and national organization probably, and some of the CSUs and other organizations are using it, but in a very limited capacity. It's not as widespread as you would find in other professions. So that, yeah, it's if I go into the last point, really, it's really about, there was a clear preference that something needs to be developed, and it would be better if it was maintained by a independent professional body to really allow the whole of the analytical community to contribute to such framework and help shape, develop it too. Okay, so these are the recommendations that we came with after, you know, looking at from the desktop research, interviewing people, and also looking at themes from the survey. So if I just read it out very in a key summary, so we need to establish a multi-agency steering group. And Sarah, I'll invite Sarah and she will talk to you about that. So one of the ideas that Sarah already chairs analytics as a profession board, which, you know, AphA is part of, so I do join in. And there are various other key stakeholders in that group. So that group could oversee the development or establishment of such framework. I'll stop. Sarah, do you want to say anything on that?
No, that pretty much covers it. Obviously, we don't have to use that board, but they do exist already and are pretty representative of, I would think, the majority, if not all, of people that have an interest in this space. So certainly a recommendation that we could take forward quite simply.
Thank you, Sarah. The second one is really, the current role of the Chief Data and Analytics Officer in NHS England and Improvement, who's Ming Tang at the moment. So she will be talking to us tomorrow to have the head of profession role to lead the landscape in terms of the analytical workforce and professionalization across the NHS. So that's one of the recommendations, to really identify someone as the head of profession. So we need to do more work, really, and that probably goes in terms of the third box on the right is around hearts and minds. So we need to, once we create an uniformed kind of standardized framework to really adopt it to all the health and care systems, we need to really change the culture of people. How do they utilize a competency framework? And we'll be asking your feedback after this session to have an interactive discussion with you. What do you think about that? Something also came up in our work that the competency framework shouldn't just look at technical skills, R, SQL, Python. We talked about all of these things, but more importantly, include software skills. How do we improve our communication? How do we, visualize product? How do we actually make relationship and engagement with everyone, particularly the non-data savvy colleagues? And how does that kind of link with the training provision of analysts? How do we develop that capability? So the other one is around, it needs to really support different organizations. So it's not just one NHS trust, it needs to really work for the analytical community. And it should really, if we can establish the principles of what it means to be an analyst, it should in theory work in any kind of health and care analytical space. And then the last thing really is about us jointly working together. And you can already probably sense that, NHSX, NHSE and AphA are working closely together. So there needs to be some kind of national comms strategy to really go out and ask people to use this, help them utilize a competency framework if we develop it. So yeah, next step. Sarah, I don't know if you want to come in and talk to this slide.
Sure. And first of all, just to again say thank you to the team. Rony, Martin, Donna, Paul, who contributed to this as well as others. It's a really fantastic piece of work and just the essential evidence that we need to really take this forward. So to take this forward, we want to, as Rony says, start actually testing some of this out. So we want to essentially take what's out there already that is good and build on it and tweak. And we want to do that fairly quickly, really, and then start testing it actually in real life. The first stage of this will be, as they call it, an alpha stage, so small scale testing, but hopefully in a good range of different places to test, learn, test a bit more, learn a bit more. And that starts in the next session with the Menti session. But equally, if you are a team that would like to be involved in this initial pilot testing, where it certainly won't be a perfect product, but we want to learn why it's not a perfect product and develop it, please do get in touch with the email address there. And in particular, I guess if you are what you might think of as a bit of an unusual or a different team that you think, I bet they haven't thought of us and how we're going to use this. We're the sort of people, you're the sort of people we want to hear from. If you haven't got the chance to scribble that email address down, if you look on the NHSX website, Rony and I put a blog together on this as well, which also links to the full report if you really want to read that too, and also has that email address on. So yeah, they are the next steps. Back over to you, Rony.
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, as Sarah mentioned, so we have Sarah and I jointly wrote a blog, which is on NHSX website, but you can also find the links, or if you're looking into AphA website, just look in AphA Hub, and the post has been pinned at the top about competency framework, and you can look at the summary, which is a lot shorter, or you can look at the whole report, which I would encourage you to. It's 137 pages, but really give you a depth of overview about the huge amount of work that's gone behind the scene to understand what we need to do. And I've really touched on this very, very summary and key overview, but please do have a look. And as Sarah said, please do come forward. We need members from our community to come forward to test this out for us. And you'll be invited to focus group session when we take on the journey to start compiling a consolidated framework. So we really need your help to shape this so it works for all the analysts, so not just one group or one area of work. We would really welcome that. Thank you very much. So I think I can stop sharing, but now I'm trying to find out how do I stop sharing. I will cross off. So we've got a Mentimeter session. So if I go straight onto, if I try and open Mentimeter session, so hopefully you can see that. Can you see that on my screen?
Yes.
Rony.
Okay, great. So Sarah and I will really value your feedback. So if you haven't used Mentimeter before, you can either use it on your computer browser. If you could go into menti.com, please, or on your mobile phone, and you will see exactly that question. So if you could just give us some feedback, and Sarah and I will try and talk it through and try and answer or comment some of those things. Also would be great to hear from some of you. Please do just raise your hand, come in and join the discussion. So the first question is, how would the analytics competency framework help you and your team? I think that's what we've found. So one of the comments being posted, provide is standardization across the team. That's one of the things we really found about the consistency of application. That's quite different, because we haven't got a consolidated competency framework. So that's something that we aim to. That's why we're kind of taking the journey on this area to do that. Help me as an individual to focus my efforts in professional development. And that's also really, really important. How do we define that, and how do we really make a connection with the competency framework to our professional registration standards, for example? What do you think, Sarah? Do you have one or two you want to pick from the screen?
Just having a look now. I think the career one is coming up quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah. And I think that is a big one, because it's the full life cycle, really, that, initial recruitment, attracting new talent, moving jobs, becoming more senior. It's all really important. And it's from both sides. It's not just as the analyst is arriving into a role, but actually someone who's trying to plan a service. If you can consistently recruit people and know within a sort of particular level who's going to sort of walk through your door on Monday morning, it actually just makes running a business in the broadest sense a lot easier.
That's absolutely right. And in terms of career planning, that's also quite important, isn't it? Knowing what the options are in your career. So I think that's really important, about options and choice. So once you know about how you develop your capacity and capability, understanding what are the options and what are the choices that you have to move in different direction in the analytics as a whole would be really beneficial.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not just about going up and up and up, but diversification and what you might want to then linking into training and development. You can see quite clearly how you need to pick out particular training courses in order to make a leap across one stream to another. And I think this has been mentioned before, but again, the ideal situation would be that you'd end up with a competency framework, and then separately you would have training courses that quite clearly kind of are badged as this will help you with this competency level. Really helps make things a lot clearer.
Absolutely right. And by the way, so we can share with you all of the comments that you're providing us. So I know you can only see a couple of ones when I'm scrolling the screen, but we can PDF this and then send it to you so you can have a look. If I move to the next question, thank you to 70 of you have already put the comments in. So fantastic. Thank you very much. The next question is, and you should see this on your screen as well. So what are the key areas to consider for a unified and endorsed? So that's important too. We are endorsing this from all of the key organizations, endorsing this as a competency framework. So there is that consistency element to it then. So what would you say are quite key elements to it? And it touches on some of the stuff that you talked about already, I think. Sarah, do you have a view around this? Comment just came in about needs to be mandated. Do you have a sense of, from an NHSX or an HSE and I perspective, is it more of a promotion or mandated activity, would you say?
This really links into the parallel conversation we've been having about actually how analysts and other data professionals are categorized in ESR. And if we can get to the point where, which is something we're also working on, these categories are clearly defined, then in a way it becomes mandated, because, you know, you've got that category within ESR, and then if you're in that, you know, if you're doing that category and you want to move into the next band of that category, then you need to have the competencies that are linked to it. I personally think, although I would be interested to hear other people's opinions.
No, I think that's a really good point. And also, from our professional body perspective, you know, what we're thinking about in future, if we do have a competency framework, this links really well with adding professional registration as a desirable criteria on your job description, which really supports that kind of ambition of what do we expect as people's, you know, skills and competencies when we're recruiting staff.
It's interesting, isn't it, the idea that some things should also be, there's a difference in opinion between whether things should be top down or bottom up, and I think probably there needs to be a bit of both, don't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. There is a fantastic comment about being in a UK-wide, not just England. And of course, AphA represents the UK-wide analysts. So for this particular work, I think we'd be really keen to engage with, you know, colleagues in Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland. So it'll be open to the offer, so we can understand more.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's lots of stuff that we can learn from. There's certainly not starting from scratch in any of this. It's more about bringing it all together. I think we're starting from a really advantageous position.
Lots and lots of fantastic comment. So I'm just going to do a bit of countdown, which I think is saying 60 seconds. So I'll give it a minute for people to finish their comment, and then we've got 2 more questions. So these are really helpful. From my perspective, I think it's brilliant. I'm sure Sarah will agree as well. Fantastic to really think through our next step and how do we approach the next steps.
Yeah, this is brilliant. Really good to see.
So there's a question about, are business analysts included? I think we need to have a further conversation around this. What do we mean by which job category are we classifying as analysts? So yeah, business analyst, they've got analyst in their name, in their title, so they should be included if they're doing any analytical activities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's part of this, and I think I was talking about this in one of the breakout sessions, which again, shameless plug for if people want to find out more about the broader programme of professional work that's going on. But that, yeah, this needs to be broad enough so that there's, you know, easy to understand categories, but then within that enough disaggregation that it can be applicable to a range of different roles, and then also have the different levels of seniority. So there's lots to include in there, but for example, the government analytical framework does that very nicely. They have about 20 different roles in there, but still manage to pull it all together into broad themes that cover a whole suite of different professionals that are working with data.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so the next question now, I think Sarah and I was talking about it a couple of days ago. This will really help us to understand, you know, what are the problem we are trying to solve. So essentially just understanding, so what challenges actually do you anticipate implementing if we develop such a competency framework from your work perspective or in your organization, if there's any? There's a lot of time element to it, but I think if we want to really see ourselves as a scientific profession, we have to allow time, right? Like any other professional. So we need to do that. And that's coming through as not enough time. So that possibly suggests that we have to do more awareness activities with the organization to let those organization understand how valuable analytics roles are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot we need to be thinking about in terms of talking to the sort of HR, OD colleagues. It's not just about talking amongst ourselves.
There's a comment around it's mandating, otherwise it will not be accepted by executives. And that leads on to nicely to the discussion we were having around analytical leadership, around, you know, the chief analysts for the systems, for the organization. And if that's not present, how can AphA, as a professional body working with NHSX, NHSC and I, get in touch with those organizations and really push in that message around usage of such framework, or recognition for analysts as a whole anyway? We just think analysts come ready-made and don't need to develop. Yeah, that kind of thinking needs to change. I am setting a countdown, 30 seconds, because there are fantastic comments in here, and then we'll go to our last question. What is in it for the senior leadership team? My comments would be, what's not in it for the senior leadership team? How will an organization survive without analytical function? Maybe they don't realize that, and we need to do more to make them realize that. Sarah, you're smiling.
Yeah.
It's a very good comment about some analysts may not identify as an analyst and may find this is scary, but that's okay. But we need to have a really open conversation. What do we mean by being an analyst? If we are saying that we are a profession, we need to be a recognized profession, we have to have this open conversation. And we invite you. We're not just sitting in a corner and saying, actually, AphA, we are the professional body. We're telling you this is that. I wanted to have a two-way conversation. As Sarah said, there needs to be a mixture of bottom-up and top-down approach, so we can find the right balance to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on its own, it doesn't, yeah, it needs to be part of a wider package, but rest assured that is the plan. But part of that wider package is not just about analysts, it's about the board level, senior managers, and the general sort of data literacy of colleagues.
I will go to the last question. What have we missed? So if there's anything you want to tell us around competency framework, Donna, have you missed looking at any other competency framework other than the 28? I'm sure this could be a massive job. Do you want to say anything about that?
They were the 28 I could find in the English language. They are international. I also looked for any European ones in languages I wasn't familiar with particularly, but couldn't find anything that hit the nail on the head. I do have a sufficient proficiency in French to go and look at the Francophone ones. Nothing to write home about there. And I wrote in my colleague at the Skills Development Network to look for anything in the German language. And the cupboard was bare, really. Google was my friend. I found as many things that called themselves competency frameworks as I could find, and I still felt unnourished by the time I'd finished all 28 of them.
It's fantastic work, Donna. Thank you. And Sarah, there's more comments coming in around cake, gin, and cheese. There's obviously some strange similarity between that and competency framework. I'm going to have to ask for another discovery phase of work to understand what the correlation is.
I have to say, I definitely haven't missed cake. I had a fondant fancy while watching one of the talks earlier. It was lovely.
So when we actually be able to meet, hopefully face-to-face in our next year's conference, if we talk about competency framework, we'll definitely have to think about cake, gin, yeah, and cheese, and might not see anybody else afterwards. It will be all over the shop after that, 2 shots of gins and or more. But there's some great feedback. Thank you very much. I'll set the timer because I'm conscious about time. We've got 5 minutes left. So I will start the countdown for a minute. But thank you so much for all your feedback. I think these are really, really useful. Although we've done some activities ourselves, and you took part on giving us the feedback via our survey process. That this live feedback process, we find it very, very useful. Sarah, I don't know if you want to say any kind of final words on this.
No, just to say thank you very much to all the people that have contributed, and thank you for your time and your really enthusiastic insights today. And again, if you want to find out more about the general professionalisation piece, then do join Rony and I at some of the breakout sessions tomorrow.
Yeah, so definitely I would encourage everyone, if you have time, please do come in. And if you haven't managed to give us the feedback yet, and if you want to take part in any of these focus group or being part of the competency framework work, please do get in touch. You'll be the key part of developing this. As I said, we need to make sure, and we will make sure you're part of this and your voice is heard, because we want to cover feedback from our community. And also my huge appreciation and thanks to Sarah as well, and from NHSX and NHS England and Improvement for involving AphA, because we have the community behind us, all of you guys representing at various different analytical levels what the journey should look like. So it's a great pleasure, and it's been really, really interesting to look at this piece of work. And you will hear from us more around where we're going next and how do we keep you engaged. So that's it from myself and Sarah. I'm seeing Sarah's nodding as well. So thank you very much for listening to us. So the next one is a really, really interesting slot, and I've been looking forward to it all day. So we have our awards ceremony, and here is the wonderful Kate. I will pass over.
Oh, thank you, Rony. Okay. Well, hello and a very good afternoon to you all, and welcome to the AphA 2021 Awards. My name's Kate Thomas, and I'm Head of Performance Monitoring at University Hospitals Dorset. So, thank you, Lindsay. So AphA have been running annual awards, giving prizes every year in one format or another that we've actually been doing these conferences. They are a fabulous way for managers and colleagues to recognise staff, their teamwork, their innovation and what have you. And it's a fabulous way for AphA to recognise its members and to signpost that excellence for others as well. Now, last year we did things a little bit differently because of COVID, of course, and we had our new SOX Awards. So this year we're headed back towards our more usual format, but noting, of course, we're going to be sending all of you that have been shortlisted a new SOX Award pin. So some of you, if you don't have them already, will become the owners of two left feet. So or more even, which would make things interesting. So the awards this year have been sponsored by the very lovely people at Data Robot, who also provided, amongst other things, the lovely little red dude in your goodie bags. I think he's brilliant, and I love my Haribo too. Scoffed that for breakfast. Excellent. So thank you, Data Robot, and thank you to the judges as well. So this year the judges have been Paul Stroner, AphA's president, and Hugh Davis from Davies Furlong Consulting, another goodie bag contributor. Do check out in his leaflet, there is a £100 Amazon voucher offer. Miss out. Okay, and probably just a quick thank you to Val, who packed all those goodie bags and sent them all out. Must have taken ages. How many smiles must there have been on people's faces when they got those, Val? Best goodie bags ever. Thank you. Right, back to the awards. We get the thank yous out of the way. So let me start sharing this with you guys. Let me see. Just a moment. It is not going to let me do that. Okay. Here we go. I'm hoping that you'll be able to see my slides.
We can, Kate. Yeah.
Oh, good. Fabulous. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, my days. Right. So who made the cut and what do we consider? So for the team entrance, we had 2 teams from Cornwall, the Information and BI team, and a smaller team. We also had from Gloucestershire, their Business Intelligence team, 2 from the Northern Care Alliance, their Data Science team and their Inequalities Working Group, and also from the Walton NHS Foundation Trust, their business team as well. Quite a long list of individuals making the shortlist here. We had Sygal and Matt, Shane from Devon, Jamie, Adam and Gareth, all from Royal Cornwall, James, who you saw this afternoon as well, from Dorset, Andrew from the Walton Centre, Matthew from Devon, Laura from Imperial College, Lynn from Cornwall, and Elaine from NHS South Central and West. So quite an impressive list there. Somebody says my slideshow is not playing. Okay. And you can only see the first slide. Don't worry, you won't miss out, I promise. So what sort of things were we looking at this year? Well, our judges were looking at the sort of elements like this: engagement between service and clients, that's really important, demonstrable improvements in service, best practice, responsiveness to your clients, the support first class service delivery, and new areas of work.
Reshare your if you stop sharing it, then reshare it. Apparently it should work.
Okay.
Very good comments on previously about technical issues.
Hide share options. Okay. Is that working?
Yes, that's better.
That's better. Okay, cool. So, right. Let's hope. All right then. So all the analysts and individual teams we've listed there deserve our congratulations. It's been a really difficult year, and although those challenges are changing, they've not really gone away at all. So we've talked a little bit about the areas we've looked at, and I could string this out longer, but I'm sure you're really keen to hear who our winners are. So the team award was really, really close. But these guys pushed through so many boundaries during the most difficult of times. They demonstrated their determination, their resilience, their innovation, brought new data flows, reported to their trusts, their operational teams and their senior management, all of which resulted in positive impacts on patient services and potentially saved lives. You know, one of their operational directors described them as the highest performing and most supportive service in the trust. And I think that's really amazing. And these winners are Gloucestershire BI team. So well done to Gloucestershire. And congratulations. Val is going to be in touch to send your awards to you. So some virtual round of applause if we can. I'm not sure I can see any, but there we go. So thank you. So now for the individual award. Well, you know what? This was also a really, really, really close run thing. It was so close, in fact, that there was nothing between the 2 highest scoring analysts, identical scores in every single section. So, deep breath, the very first time we have not 1, but 2. Equally scoring, we have 2 analysts of the year this year. So I'm going to read you just a few of the comments that their nominees shared. So one was described as an analytically focused quality improvement professional, delivering analytical work with a depth and breadth that has had the major role in initiating and driving change and supporting improvement work on a large scale. People exceeded expectations. Their use of R transformed their organisation's use of data, and their work ethic was described as second to none. Another individual was described as continuing to push the boundaries of NHS analysis. They focused their time on training and supporting others locally as well as nationally, and helped analysts starting their analytical journey. And actually, do you know, aside from that, people are cited as organising all sorts of outside work events for their colleagues as well, which is brilliant because it is the whole picture at the end of the day. These 2 individuals are Sygal, who we saw earlier. Well done, Sygal, Nottingham, and Elaine from NHS South Central and West. Now I'm going to try and stop sharing this in a minute. Congratulations. Okay. Now I'm going to hop back on. So what I'm hoping is, here we go. I hope you're back to me again now. So what I'm hoping is actually, I was going to say, I can see some of you there. Give us a wave, winners. Go on. Well done indeed. I know that Matthew's going to be doing an article in the magazine for us, which is fabulous. So it might be dragging you off for a little bit of an interview, or maybe need some pictures. Be good. And I'd probably like quite a lot of you to be coming around to do some of the regional shows with some more show and tell, and then we can spend a little bit more time with you than we've been able to this afternoon. So well done and thank you very much. Okay. Actually, I've been much shorter than everybody else, but I'm going to. Are there any questions anybody would like to ask of our winners? Oh, we've got a hand up. And it is Joe Turner. Joe. No, hand down.
Sorry, that was me attempting to applaud.
Oh, don't worry. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It has keyboard issues. Okay. All right then. So Val, I believe you're going to be in touch with people to get their awards sent. And yes, we're going to have to get a second one done for the Analyst of the Year, which is just amazing. We went through and through it all, but you've just done so well. So I'm going to hand back now to Rony. And I think we are nearly, it's nearly tea time or cheese time or cake time, whichever you'd all prefer.
Thank you very much, Kate. That's congratulations to all of our winners. Well deserved, fantastic. But also thank you to everybody who's who's nominated people, and your names are there. So all of you have been doing fabulous work. So really well done. Thank you. So I've got the pleasure and delight to be able to close this session. So today has been absolutely fantastic. It's amazing to see how many fascinating analytical pieces of work is going on in this space. It's just it's really good. And for all of you to be able to come forward and share your work and talk about this very openly and share with the rest of the analysts in our community is fantastic. So thank you for doing that. Just a couple of other shout outs and thank you from me to our sponsors again. So Data Robot for sponsoring us, Hugh Davies from Davies Furlong Consulting, and Meditrends and InSource, all of them been supporting AphA for quite some time. So thank you to all of you guys. And particular thanks to the organizing committee. That's Val, Jane, Kate, Emma, Alison and Donna. All of you have been fantastic organizing this. I mean, it's been flawless today. So thank you so much for organizing such a fantastic day. And we've got more to come. So well done to all of you. Donna, thank you for your hard work in making sure the teams are working okay and reminding us that we are 1 minute behind the schedule. So it's been really good. Also from Donna's side, Carolyn Harding, Tony Haslam and Helen Pennington, sorry. So thank you to all of you for supporting the Microsoft Teams and organization to all of that. The very last thing is, so we have got a social gathering at 5 o'clock. So please join us with your own wine, unfortunately, but hopefully in future when we can meet face to face, we will give you double the wine to make it up. But yeah, 5 o'clock, if you want to just join in, all of our sponsors, speakers, all of you will be there and we will just have fun. So you all deserve it. And if I don't see you this evening, we'll see you back 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have a great evening. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. Take care.